Hi, everybody. I'm going to walk you through this week's exercise. I think that the way it was written out might be just a little bit confusing, and so I think if I give you a step-by-step demo, it might help you understand it a little bit better. So what I'm asking you to do is just simply do exercises 1 through 5 in your Chapter 8 of the Digital Foundations book. First, using the flower picture that they provide you with, you can download that. And after you've played around with that, I want you to do the same thing, but this time you're going to do it to a picture of yourself, something that needs to have some editing or adjustments made. So the first thing I'm going to do is open up the picture. If I'm already in Photoshop, I can go File, Open, and search for the picture there. Or if I haven't launched Photoshop yet, I can always find the picture, uh, click on it, and tell it open with, and choose Photoshop. Okay, just two ways of doing the same thing. I'll just do it this way since Photoshop's already open. And here is the picture of the flower. I believe it's an orchid. Okay. And let me get out of my crop tool there. I'm not ready to show you that. Okay, so anyway, this stuff here is a little convoluted, so I don't care if you really don't read exercise 1. Exercise 2, excuse me, making some minor adjustments. This also, there's a step in here that I think they skip, and so I need to point something out to you. But basically, this first step is about sharpening, and my my view on sharpening is, in reality, there's nothing you can do to change. How should I say this? In reality, you cannot actually make an out of focus picture in focus. There's some settings on Photoshop that claim to, and if it's only the very, very most subtle of adjustments, you might be able to increase a little edge contrast, and that's really all that you're doing. But if you have a really soft or a really blurry image, Photoshop is not going to know what to do if you want it sharper, because the only pixels it has to work with are the ones you gave it. And if you gave it blurry pixels, it's not going to know how to reorganize those into sharp pixels. So I personally very rarely use the unsharp mask. It's only for just super fine tuning. So go ahead and try it. But they tell you here to go to filter directly to unsharp mask, and they skipped a step that I don't want you guys to get frustrated. You have to go to filter and choose sharpen, and then choose unsharp mask. Okay, so I thought, you probably need to know that. Now, one thing I'll point out to you, let me cancel for just a second. Just like in Illustrator, we have a bunch of menus items up here, and then we've got a bunch of tools over here, and we've got a bunch of palettes over here, and it's an awful lot to remember. So if you can't remember, oh, where was that, where was that unsharp mask? I can't find it anywhere, or how do I, how do I resize an image or something? If you can't remember where to find it, don't worry. Just go to the little help, and not only will it take you to it, but it will also show you for future reference where you can find it. So it says, see, you have to go to filter, and then here, on sharp mask. Okay, so the guidelines in the exercise say that for something like this, we want to keep our threshold down pretty low, at 0, and radius something less than 1. And then the percentage somewhere between 20 and 250%. And I think what I'd like you to do with this is just try it from one extreme to the other. probably the best thing to do is like on the zoomed in part of the window, let's get to a place where there are actually some edges, and let's see what happens, you know, as we. Okay, that what happened in that when I took it off, I don't know if it's showing, if you can see it very well or not, but all that did was made it like super, super grainy. You can see that this line here is a little bit more pronounced, but it really added a lot of noise to it. Um, you know, play around with the radius and the threshold, and sometimes you can kind of fake it out a little bit more, but you know, for the most part, the only way that this is going to be of any use to you is if it's for the most minor of adjustments. And so, you know, just play with it. It's not a whole lot. Step backwards on that, but give it, you know, give it a try. Okay, the next thing it talks about is how to rotate or crop an image. And so I've got a couple of things I want to show you in here. Under image, you can go to image rotation, and here you can turn the canvas upside down if you want. You can turn it right back side up. You can turn it 90 degrees counterclockwise or clockwise. I'm just going to go back to where I was. You can flip it if you wanted to get a mirror image of it for some reason. You can certainly do that. I don't want to do that, so I'm going to undo it. What else did it have in here? Image, rotate canvas. Okay, and then the next thing that it wanted you to look at was the crop tool. So the crop tool is, this is actually going to eliminate pixels, you know, so my recommendation if you ever crop anything is don't crop the original, because once those pixels are thrown away, you're never getting them back again. And so, you know, whenever you're editing, really whenever you're editing anything in Photoshop, always work from a copy. Always have a backup of your original somewhere that is not to be touched, because we don't want to be throwing perfectly good pixels away just to never get them back again. And so you know what would happen. I really like the way this crop tool works, because it shows you your picture here, and then it kind of grays out the areas that you might be cropping out. And if you mess up and go, oh, no, I need to start over, just hit the little, I call it the no smoking sign here. And it's like, no, cancel that. That's not what I wanted. Let me try again. You know, and this time, you know, I'll say, okay, this is good. I like this. And I'll hit the check mark here. And I don't know that you necessarily need to keep it that way, but maybe you'll want to crop the picture that you work on for the second part of this assignment. Okay, now we want to talk about the image size, and if you're using Creative Cloud, it's going to look a little bit different from how it looks here in the book. You're not going to have this document size thing down here, but I'll show you that in a second. Image size is super, super important, and the people who wrote these exercises, oh, sorry about, that's my dog. She's sick and she's sitting with me, and I moved and she's upset, but I don't want to start this over, so lie down. Okay, I'm sorry, baby, come here. Okay, I already started it over twice, and so I'm just going to keep going, mistakes and all. Sorry about that. Okay, so anyway, back to the image size. They intentionally put a really large picture in here for you, and that's good. Big pictures are good, because the more pixels, the better as far as image quality goes. So originally, before I cropped this, it was its pixel dimensions were about 6,000 by 4,000 pixels, I suppose. And that would be like if you took a picture on one of your DSLR cameras and you had it set for you know, the largest image size or the highest quality, or maybe what would be called the fine quality of image. So they're going to take up a lot of space. This is 60 megabytes here. And if you're going to print, it's you want to have it that big, because if I was going to print this out, let me see how big this is in inches, by the way. And so to find out how many inches this is, you can just click this little down button right here. Okay. So you can see that at the resolution it's at right now, which is 240 pixels per inch, it's going to print out at 23 inches and some by 15 inches and some. Okay. Now the really important thing that matters isn't how many pixels, I mean, it isn't how many inches, isn't the resolution. What's really important is the total overall number of pixels. Okay, so watch what happens. Let me just go to inches here. Okay, I'm going to change the resolution from 240 to 72. Okay, and what happened was I have a lot less. I have a lot fewer pixels in here. Now you can see that it's still 23 inches by 15.5 inches, but it's at a resolution of 72. It's look at you've thrown away most of the pixels that were making up that picture, and this is fine if it's something that you're going to put on the web and it's not for print. But you don't ever want to throw away perfectly good pixels for something that you're going to print. So anytime you do anything with image size, make sure it's a copy and not your original. Okay, let me go back in there, show you again. So another thing we could do is, say you've got, say, what happens when I do this? Okay. There we go. Say I have a certain number of inches that I want it to be. Like I really want this to be, 12 inches. But I don't want it to be any lower. I don't really want to throw away any of those pixels. What I do is I uncheck the resample box, and now you can see that it's still 56 by 37 some odd. Okay, so let me go back to inches here. Let me go back to pixels here. But let me see again what the assignment asks us to do here. Well, it just says our resolution is 240. We don't really need to change anything. So we're actually going to leave this kind of big. But make sure you read this resample image stuff, and we'll talk more about resolution later. But for now, I would just say that the basic principle is this. If you're going to print something, you want to have a whole bunch of pixels. If you're going to not print it, you're going to put it on the web, there's no reason to put a 6,000 by 4,000 pixel image on the web when a screen only shows up at 72 dpi anyway. Okay, it'll take forever to load. It'll slow everything down. And so you have to be thinking about the output, where you want this picture to go when you're finished with it. And and remember, do it to a copy. Always keep your original somewhere safe. Okay. Next thing they want you to do is play with the histogram. It wants you to convert into grayscale. So let me show you where that is. Image mode, grayscale. And what it's going to do is it's going to say, hey, are you sure you want to do this? We're going to throw away all your color information and say, yeah, okay, that's what I want to do. And actually sometimes I think these things are more striking as a as a black and white image, but there's better ways of making a color image into black and white that I'll show you at a later time. Okay. Now let's go into the histogram, which is under window. The histogram is a palette. So just like in Illustrator, all the palettes, we have different palettes. There's some of the same, but a lot of different ones. All the palettes are under window, okay? And by default, the program likes to stack them up over here on the right hand side. So what it's asking you to look at right here is the peaks and valleys that you see on this chart. The extreme left side of the chart represents black, and the extreme white side of the chart represents pure white. And then everything else that you see falls somewhere in the middle. And generally what we want to have a picture that has good contrast, we want to have a nice distribution of pixels from the dark end to the light end. And I'll show you how you can change this in a minute. But right now this picture's a little dull, in black and white at least. It's whites. There aren't any whites that are truly a pure white. And we could probably stand to increase the contrast a little bit. Okay, and so I'll show you how to do that. But basically, if you want to see, kind of a diagram that shows you the range of tonal values, that's what the histogram does. What else does it? Let's see. The palette conveys information about grayscale tones. So, okay. And honestly, I got to tell you, this is important stuff. You need to read it, but I don't think it's anything you need my help with. So I'm going to undo my grayscale and go back into color. And or does it want us to still work in black and white? Oh, it does. Okay, let me just keep working black and white then. Okay. Okay, so the first thing it wants us to do is play around with levels. And so if you open up the levels, go to Image Adjustments, and it's going to give you a histogram that looks exactly like this one over here. I'm going to put that one away now. And you can see what I'm talking about. 0 at this end is pure black. 255 at this end is pure white. And the one in the center represents your midtones. Now, one thing that I a lot of times do is if I don't have enough contrast in there, sometimes I'll like say if it's really, really far away from the white, I'll just take that white and kind of drag it over until it, touches the first white pixel. And then what that does is it, kind of increases that range a little bit. And, you can really overdo this. You can really go too far with this. And honestly, levels is not necessarily the absolute best way to do this. It's one of the quickest and easiest ways to do this. But it's also one of the most damaging ways to do this. All these edits that you're doing are damaging your file, which again is why you have your original safely stored somewhere and you work off a copy, because what happens is it starts to replace the original pixels with the kind of pixels that you want, and then they're changed, and they're, if you push it too far and you save it, you're kind of stuck with it. So this is something that takes, I think, a little bit of finesse, but just play around with it. Open this up, check out all the different, I like to just check everything out in its extremes. I like to take the slider bars and just drag them back and forth. And let's see. Okay, now, are we back in color? Let me change this back to color. Edit, undo grayscale. Okay. And what does it have us doing? And the upper right pull-down menu of the histogram palette. Let me get my histogram back out again because I put it away. Whoops. Got to get in Photoshop. Window. Histogram. Okay. And it says for us to choose all channels view. Okay. So basically, light that comes, light is measured in primary colors. They're different from the primary colors that we have um, in paint, which is red, yellow, blue. Okay, in light, our three primaries are red, green, blue. Okay, so this is how all the other colors are made, is combinations of these three spectrums. And if you were to look at inside the pixels in your computer, it's like every single pixel has a certain amount of red, a certain amount of green, and a certain amount of blue that it can be at any given time. And there's millions and millions and millions of varieties on that. And that's where, you take the green down a little bit and you push the red up a little bit and you get a change in your color. So we don't need to go into a whole lot of detail about that, but what it's showing you is that, you can go in by channel and individually edit the green, the green light, the image that's made by the green light, the image that's made by the blue light, and the image that's made by the red light. Okay, so let's see what it wants us to do here. Some of these things are a little different looking. I think the difference is that I'm using Creative Cloud here, and they're using CS6 in the tutorial. So don't let that throw you, because I'm getting everything is still kind of in black and white there. But honestly, I have to say with the histograms, um, I just trust my eyes. I personally very rarely use the histogram. Uh, I I can see where it would have its purpose, but um, I I just feel like I have a trained eye, and I can look directly at the image and tell what's working, and I don't need some diagram off to the side. But that said, a lot of people depend very heavily on the histogram, and they're probably doing some very technical things with it, so it's good to know what it is. Okay, next thing we want to do is adjustments, image, adjustments, and curves. This is going to pull up your curves palette here. And this is how you can adjust those different color of light. Okay, so you can separate out the blues and the greens, and just in the reds. Just go in there and start playing around. And what you will find with curves is you never want to be very extreme. You never want to be very extreme with it. Image adjustments, curves. The only way curves are going to work for you is if you do very, very kind of subtle adjustments. And a lot of times what we're trying to do is just get like a very graceful S curve on either side of this diagonal line here. And that's, if you have to do anything more than that, you may not be editing in the right way. But, here we can, see what happened when I moved this. The picture got a lot pinker. Move it the other way. So if it's to now the picture's getting a lot greener. Okay, let's see what happens here. This is the darker end, and that's the lighter end. So just play around with all of that, and adjust them the way they say to in the instructions here. Okay, let's scroll through all of this, and it wants you to and then it wants you to look at your histogram again. And since I didn't apply anything, I'm not going to have this, but this is what I was talking about. When you do these adjustments, this is where the damage happens. So where you see all these little black lines going through the histogram, this is representing pixels that have been dramatically altered, and are never coming back, are never going to come back again after you save the file. And so, we consider any kind of adjusting that we do to an image to be damaging. Okay, so you're essentially kind of damaging the original file when you do adjustments in Photoshop. And you know, that's all well and good. You know what I'm going to say, don't you? As long as you're working on a copy, as long as you have your original backed up. I think I'm making myself pretty clear on that. I hope. Okay. And then the last thing that they want you to do in this exercise is play around with the hue and the saturation. This is another place it can be a lot of fun, and it can also be real easy to go way, way, way overboard. Um, what did they want us to do? Image adjustments, hue saturation right here. There's in Photoshop, there's about 6 different ways of doing everything. You know, there's easier ways of doing some things, and then there's more technical ways of doing some things. But you know, here I'm changing the hue. It's a much easier approach than I was doing in curves. You know, where I actually had a little graph and I could, you know, isolate the channels individually. Here it's just kind of much more of a broad kind of umbrella approach. It's easier, but I have less control. Okay, you can get super saturated. You want to be really, really careful with your saturation. And just to, you know, explain like what a black and white photograph is, it's a photograph that has no color at all. Saturation is the amount of color, the intensity of the color. So a pure black and white photograph has no color, therefore it's completely unsaturated. And sometimes one thing that's kind of fun to do is take out most but not all of the saturation, you know, for some kind of a visual effect. And then you've got this kind of partially black and white, partially color thing that can look kind of cool. And then of course you never you never want to go off the deep end there. That just hurts my eyes just thinking about it. And same thing, you can bring out the lightness or darken things up a little bit in here, but it just, you know, if you're not careful, it just goes very much like a screen has been put over it, and it looks horrible. So all of these, you have to just be super, super subtle, and that's just something that takes practice. And so, you know, the next thing that I want you to do, let's just save this. Let's go ahead and save this as, I wanted you to save it as both a Photoshop and a JPEG, and PSD is Photoshop. And so do that like I've been having you do, first initial, last name, not mine, yours, underscore underscore practice, underscore 03, and then we're going to call this A because it's the first half of the assignment. Okay, tell it save to my desktop. If I have a PSD document that I want to turn into a JPEG, I simply go to Save As again, and I choose JPEG from the drop-down, and tell it save. Okay, and then I can put this one away, and I'm going to open up, I had a picture of my cat. I'm not really going to edit it because I just want to show you, you know, what you need to do for the assignment. I think you should get it by now. But here's my cat. His name is Dexter, and yes, he was named after the serial killer on TV. Appropriately named. And I thought that was a really funny picture because I caught him just like right when he was when he was jumping off of the table, and I just think it's a really funny a funny pose there. But if I was going to do adjustments on this one, you know, I would say it's way too red. It's kind of a yellowish cat, and he's about the same color as my tile floor. And so this tile floor in my house, and the walls are kind of a similar color, lighter but similar color, they tend to cast a orangey, pinkish, warm tone on everything, which can be very pleasing, but it can also be like really, really out of balance. So you know, if I were going to be doing anything with this, I would probably go in and play around with my curves and try to take the reds out of it a little bit. Well, let me just try it. Let me go to Image Adjustments, Curves, and let me go into the red channel. And see, there's a lot of red, okay? So see how it's really spiked right here. If I want to make the red a little bit more subtle, if I want to push it, I go up. If I want to make it subtle, I go down. And basically what you're doing when you're adjusting colors is you're moving them. If a color is too much in one direction, when you move it in the other direction, you're going towards its opposite. And red's opposite is green. Okay. And so what happens is if you get rid of the red pixels, the green pixels are replacing the red pixels, and they're neutralizing it. And what it's doing is it's neutralizing the pink quality of that. Conversely, I could push my greens a little bit. Now look, that looks horrible, doesn't it? I really don't want to do that very much, because that's not very effective. But whenever you're doing this, remember, it's whatever you do, it should be very, very subtle adjustment on either side of that line. Okay. Let's see. I probably would also crop this because it's not a very good composition. I don't need that chair right there. And I think in a square format, it's it's a lot more interesting of a picture. So, let's say I've done my edits to this, and I'm going to save this as, whoops, I like to have caps in lowercase. I know I'm picky. _3 underscore practice _03, and then this is 03B. So we're going to save it as both a Photoshop and a JPEG. Tell it okay. Okay. So notice that when I renamed this, luckily I've still got my original. Well, I changed the name of it there, but I have the original. Here it is. Here's my original right here. So simply renaming the file, anything I did, this image is safe. It's protected. Renaming is, probably the best thing you can do. That's the easiest way to make a copy. Okay, so the way that I want you to submit this is I've given you a template for a PowerPoint. So if you, I think I have it attached here. Let me see. Oh, I'm still in, let's see. Not in edit mode. There it is, little tiny attachment down there. So at the bottom of your instructions, I've got an attachment, and I don't know what's going on with that. Let's get out. I'll make sure you have a link to that attachment. I don't know why it's not working for me right now, but I'm just going to go ahead and open up the template that I made for you guys. Where did I put it? Here we go. Okay. So I'm making this super easy for you. All you do is replace the pictures with the ones you worked on. So I've got practice 3. Just enter your name right here, and delete this picture and put in the edited one that you did. Okay. Then your original picture is going to go here, and just write in a couple of complete sentences what you think needs to be changed on this, why this picture doesn't look good. Now remember, this isn't a picture of your cat. This is a picture of you. This is supposed to be a self-portrait. I just figured you guys were probably tired of looking at that same picture of me over and over again, and thought you might like to see something new. So this needs to be you, not your cat. Okay, and then the third one, or the last one I should say, is after you've done your edits. Okay, so when you submit this to me, what you're going to do is you're just simply going to give me, you don't need to write anything in the submission box or the comments because you've already given me your comments in the PowerPoint. Just browse your computer for that PowerPoint and it's in there somewhere. Okay, I'm not gonna load it right now, but just browse for it and then hit submit, and that's all you need to do. Okay, so hopefully this made the assignment a little bit more clear. Yeah, I apologize for the confusion at first. As I told you, we're kind of writing this course. It's the first time we've offered it online, and my colleague and I have been working together, and basically he writes the assignments and then I come along after him and edit them and and make the writing all pretty. So hopefully you didn't get too confused, and this is much more clear for you. So I'm just going to kind of cancel out of there. And just as a reminder, I have moved the due date back a week. Oh, it looks like I'm logged off. Okay, well anyway. I did move the due date back to October 7th, so no panic there. And that's it for now.